Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Meetinghouse of Provincetown, where we affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and where we support each other in our spiritual search for truth and meaning. My name is Reverend Kate Wilkinson, and I am so glad that you have joined us this morning. Welcome to those of you in the room, and welcome also to those of you joining us from home via our live stream. It is so good to be back with you all after a short trip away. I have to admit, I'm still a little jet lagged. I feel like someone woke me up at 4:30 a.m. and said, go. Actually, this morning I took a quick left turn out of my road, which I celebrated for several minutes because in the summer we can't do that. And then I realized you were supposed to go right. But I am here, so we celebrate this. Before we continue with our worship service, I have just a few announcements to share with all of you. I want to thank Rabbi Donna Berman for preaching last week for Rosh Hashanah. I hear that that was wonderful. And of course, tonight at sundown begins Yom Kippur, so we think of all of you who will be fasting. I'd like to welcome our guest musician, Austin Smith, this morning. Yay. Austin's going to be playing guitar for us after the prayer and then again during the postlude. And next week, Austin will be subbing for Mary with the choir. So thank you for joining us, Austin. For those of you who are taking the online safety workshop, a reminder that we're going to have a little debrief gathering next Tuesday night at 6 o'clock. And that means that there will be no online coffee hour next week, but we do have online coffee hour this week, so that we hope you can join us this Tuesday at 5 o'clock on Zoom. Let us know if you need that link. The Meetinghouse will be closed this week on Wednesday because our UU Meetinghouse Board of Directors will be having a retreat, and Kenneth and I will also be attending that, so please send your leadership good wishes for a fruitful and fulfilling day on Wednesday. We are about to schedule a new members class for anyone wishing to learn more about the Meetinghouse or becoming a member. So please let me or our office administrator, Kenneth, or our membership chair, Ada, know if you are interested. You can give a wave, Ada, so people know who you are. Let us know if you're interested in that. We haven't picked a date yet. We wanted to see how many people we have and how many live locally and how many will be joining us via Zoom. So just let us know. And finally, we hope that those of you attending in person today will stick around for a little while after the service for coffee and conversation downstairs in Acker Bosworth Hall. Now let's take a moment to affirm our community's covenant. You can find this on the little purple laminated cards in your pews, or you can just listen, and I'm going to say it line by line, and you can repeat after me. Love is the spirit of this meeting house. This is our great covenant. To dwell together in peace. To seek the truth in love. And to help one another. And now, as we light our chalice here in the sanctuary, I invite those of you who are watching from home to light a candle wherever you are. In that way, we can feel connected even while we are apart. And this morning, I invite Vicki and Bo to light our chalice for us.
Our chalice lighting this morning is by Reverend Sharon Wiley. The hours of day and night are in balance. In honor of earth-centered tradition that celebrate this time of year, we observe that the flaming chalice holds the elements of the four directions: earth, air, fire, water. The wax of the candle for earth, the air that feeds the flame, the fire we light, and the chalice itself, the cup, the symbol of water. We light our chalice and reflect on the balance we seek in our lives, the balance we seek in our hearts, the balance we seek in our world.
Thank you. I invite you to join me now in singing our opening hymn. You can find that in this gray hymnal. It's going to be number 41, You That Have Spent the Silent Night. That's number 41 in the gray hymnal, You That Have Spent the Silent Night. Please rise as you are able. Seated. Please join us now in a time of meditation and prayer. During this time or at any time during the service, you are welcome to light a silent candle at the table to the right of the pulpit, and there's a journal there to record your thoughts and prayers. Our meditation this morning is by Elizabeth Tarbox. Dukkha, they say. The Buddhists say all is dukkha. It's hard to translate, they tell us. It means literally suffering, but the feeling of dukkha is closer to impermanence. The fact of impermanence is central to the Buddhist path to nirvana, enlightenment. Dukkha, all is impermanence. Nothing lasts. I thought of that yesterday watching leaves come down in a shower and the smell of the rotting ones going back into the earth. Leaf to humus and back to earth to nourish the roots of the mother tree. The crows crying as the leaves fall and their nests are exposed. Dukkha, all is impermanence. And life goes on, and people who were with us last year at this time have died. All souls pass on. All is dukkha. Nothing lasts. The path to enlightenment is understanding, accepting impermanence to the point where we no longer struggle against it. That is the way of the Buddha. But here in the West, we search for that which is permanent, even as we live with the death of all things, all people. We search for a sure footing on the path strewn with fallen leaves. We notice the buds of next year's growth, tight-curled and waiting. We hold on to the things we can count on: our church, our community, our memories of those who have died before us, our love and hope, and the search for certainty in a world that is dukkha. God of creation, God of today, let us find each other in a changing world. Let us experience love as something which exists, a possibility which is. Let us know that we are alive and being renewed miraculously each second, that the impermanence gives to life its freshness and surprise, that our memories of yesterday and our expectations of tomorrow make now a cherished, precious, eternal moment. Amen.
finish off your piece there, a little echoing. Our reading today is Essential Wisdom by Charles S. Stevens, Jr. E.B. White once wrote of his difficult dog, Fred, "Life without him would be heaven, but I'm afraid it is not what I want." That seems to me to be a piece of essential wisdom that should never be lost. It's broad, as essential wisdom ought to be, and touches more than E.B. White's mangy dog, Fred. Life without a lot of Freds in our lives would be heaven, or so at least it appears at first light. A lingering Nebraska winter is a kind of Fred, but life without winter is not really what I want. Life without conflict or unhappiness has certain appeals, but ever since we were expelled from Eden, it has been thus. And who can imagine a worthwhile life without them? Life without the pain of loss would be heaven, but I'm afraid it is not what any of us would take. I think we really don't want heaven. What we want is full and worthwhile life, outlined as it is by its limitations. What we want is not life without sorrow, but a fullness of experience that absorbs sorrow and joy, Nebraska winters and springs, living and dying.
Please join me in singing our next hymn, which is number 52 in that same gray hymnal, "In the Sweet Fields of Autumn." That's number 52 in the gray hymnal, "In Sweet Fields of Autumn." Please rise as you are able. Now is the time in our service where we take a collection for the ongoing support of this Meetinghouse and our shared ministry. As we enjoy a musical reflection by our choir, we welcome your donations here in the sanctuary or online through PayPal or Venmo. You can find that information on our website, uumh.org, or there are QR codes in the pews as well. I invite 4 volunteer ushers forward to come collect the offering. On and off-site, your offerings will now be gratefully received.
When hate is all I see, I choose joy, I choose joy. When fear won't let me be, I choose joy, I choose joy. When the veil lies by the light from my eyes, I look up to the skies and I choose joy, I choose joy. Joy, 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 I choose joy. Joy, 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 I choose joy. In this moment right here, I choose love, I choose love. For the ones that I hold dear, I choose love, I choose love. For to be all I can be, for the light to shine in me, for all people to be free, I choose love, I choose love. Love, 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 I choose love. Love, 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 I choose love. Is that hope abound? Here on stable ground, hear the sweeter sound, the chains have come unbound, and love is all around when I choose joy. Joy, 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 I choose joy. Okay, done. So here we go. Brenda, ready? Joy, 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 I choose joy. Joy, 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 I choose joy.
Thank you. Thank you. My family is supposed to be at the Big E today in Springfield. I don't know if they got rained out or not. Have any of you been to the Big E? Yeah? For those of you who haven't, it's the big state fair for all of New England. And it used to be called the Eastern States Exposition. But in 1966, for their 50th anniversary of the fair, they started calling it the Big E. And the E is for entertainment, education, and excitement. And my family likes to get there right when the gate opens and stay till the closing bell. It's a full-day affair. There are livestock competitions, a circus, music, a farmer's market, and plenty of deep-fried treats. There are also a lot of rides on the Midway, including a giant Ferris wheel and also some roller coasters. Our favorite poet around here, Lynn Unger, compares life to a roller coaster in her poem, Autumn Equinox. The autumn equinox was yesterday, by the way. You may think of it as marking the long descent, she says, the slide into winter's weariness. Such moments are not easy to accept. Don't we all want to petition some cosmic governor to grant summer a reprieve? But the sentence is always cast. The scales will always tip whatever you might think is just. In this brief, breath-catching moment at the top, you may recall the slow climb of summer, the safe, steady ticking up the tracks. The self-possessed might even gaze out and glimpse the jostling fairgrounds and the quiet that stretches beyond the fence. Look quickly. Even now, the car tips forward and picks up speed. As the wind in your face increases and your stomach leaps, remember, this is the ride you came for. The fear and the sense of flying. Winter won't seem long when you slide to a halt around the final curve. Now, fall is my absolute favorite season, this brief, breath-catching moment at the top of the year. And I don't worry about the slide into winter's weariness. I love seeing that first red tree in a forest of green, digging out my sweaters for the crisp autumn nights, apple picking. But this morning I woke up and it was so cold, wasn't it? And it was just a little bit sad to dig out a sweater because I hadn't realized until today that summer is actually over. I quickly scrolled through the weather app on my phone to see if there would be any 70-degree days popping up over the next 10 days, like a little parting gift. No, just in case you didn't look, no. Yeah. Summer is definitely over, and it's sad. But it is precisely because summer is a fleeting thing that we love it so much. If summer lasted forever, it would not be as special. And the same is true with fall. I'm reminded of the story of King Midas. Do you remember this story? He was so enthralled with his gold that he made a wish that everything he touched would turn to gold. And his wish was granted. And at first he delighted in changing everything before him into a golden version. Golden plates, golden table, golden apple. Then he became hungry, and he couldn't bite into that golden apple. And he wept as he began to see his golden touch as not a blessing, but a curse. And when his daughter tried to comfort him in her embrace, guess what happened? She turned to gold. Too much of a good thing ruins it, you see. We wish for summer days to last forever, but then I think about those places in the world in which, for part of the year at least, the summer days really do last forever. Because our Earth tilts on her axis, people who live closest to the poles experience lengths of time when there is either no sunlight at all or no respite from the daylight. Fairbanks, Alaska, the closest American city to the Arctic Circle, the days there start getting longer in March, and by the summer solstice, there's almost 24 full hours of daylight. Hammerfest, Norway, the northernmost town in the world, the midnight sun starts shining in the sky in mid-May, stays almost to the end of July. And the nearby town of Rappafjord boasts a golf course that stays open 24 hours a day. You might like that, Dave. Sounds like hell to me. Not just because of the endless golf, but because it's so hard to sleep when it's light out. Endless light would be so irritating, like perpetually cheerful people. I mean, how can anyone be happy all the time, right? It just doesn't seem real to me. I don't trust it. I am a New Englander. I need seasons in my weather and at least a little moodiness in my people. I need a balance of the day and the night, even if that balance shifts over the seasons. In an article called The Shadow, the Light, and the Balance, psychotherapist Michael Formica writes about the nature of darkness and light within psychology and spirituality. Both tend to get it wrong, he says, by focusing on one or the other. Western psychology, he writes, often begins with the premise that we are ill, that there is something wrong with us. If you have begun with a new therapist lately, you know this because in order for your insurance to cover your visits, you need a diagnosis code, right? Something needs to be wrong. You can't just be going because it's a very good idea that we all be going to therapy. In contrast, he says, postmodern, New Age spirituality often begins with the premise that everything is sweetness, light, grace, and angels. There is an almost self-conscious imperative to avoid the darkness, focusing solely on the light. Whether we are talking about spirituality or psychology, he says, we end up rejecting parts of ourselves, our community, our culture, and our world. It is quite necessary, he says, to seek the light within the darkness and recognize the darkness within the light. Joyce Rupp, a Catholic writer and poet, challenges us to befriend our inner darkness. I gratefully acknowledge how darkness has become less of an enemy for me, she says, and more of a place of silent nurturance where the slow, steady gestation needed for my soul's growth can occur. Not only is light a welcomed part of my life, she says, but I'm also developing a greater understanding of how much I need to befriend my inner darkness. Too many of us panic in the dark, Sue Monk Kidd writes. We don't understand that it's a holy dark and that the idea is to surrender to it. Lisa and I got home from our trip at about 1 a.m. last week after a long plane ride and an interminable system of detours coming out of Logan Airport. We finally got on Route 6 and navigated toward home. And as we crossed the bridge and drove further and further east, it got darker and darker. And there were no other cars on the road, no businesses open, no street lights. And I think we got to about Eastham when I said, I forgot how dark it is out here. And she said, I was just thinking the same exact thing. There's a wonderful Buddhist story that goes like this. Once, when the Zen master Tokusan was still a student, he visited his teacher, Ryutan, just before sundown. And they sat on the floor of Ryutan's hut, casually drinking tea and discussing Zen until deep into the night. And at last, Ryutan said, maybe it's about time you went home. Tokusan bowed to his teacher and walked to the door. It's completely dark outside, he said. So Ryutan lit a lantern and said, why not take this? But just as Tokusan was about to take the lamp from his teacher's hand, Ryutan blew out the candle. And Tokusan suddenly knew everything there was to know. Sometimes we need to embrace the utter darkness in order to make our way to the light. When I got out of the car after that long trip, I stretched my legs a bit. It had been so good to get away, and it was so good to be home. Before loading up with all of our luggage, I looked up into the dark night sky, and I saw 1,000,000 stars, and they were brilliant in the darkness. That word, equinox, comes from a Latin word meaning equal night. And on the day of an equinox, daytime and nighttime are of approximately equal duration. So what does it teach us to spend equal amounts of time in the light and in the darkness? What does it mean to realize that we have both darkness and light within ourselves? And how do we make sense of the balance of joy and sorrow in our lives? How do we navigate that roller coaster of our emotions, our life experiences, the seasons of our lives, the chapters? Those of you who have hung around here long enough over the past few years know that I rail against the religious tropes that everything happens for a reason, the universe is testing us, that we all have our cross to bear, or that God will not give us more than we can handle. There's nothing positive or redemptive in itself about suffering. And I have been through enough grief and sadness and depression and cancer in my family to know that I would not wish these experiences on anybody, and neither would any God that I would ever care to believe in. So I do not say this next part lightly. I am actually grateful that I am not one of those perpetually cheerful people. Not because I relish my grief or anger or sadness, but because it means that I live on the full spectrum of human experience. My loneliness allows me to appreciate friendship, and my disappointments make my achievements sweeter. My anger crystallizes what I believe in. My regret allows me to make, hopefully, better choices. And my losses help me to value and cherish love. So what can the equinox teach us? For those of us who are struggling, maybe it can teach us to trust that though we are in a time of darkness now, there will also be times of light. That if we wait it out, tend to our hopes, are gentle with ourselves, this too shall pass. And that the darkness can actually be a fertile time. We learn about ourselves. We grow. We create. For those of us who are living in the light, maybe equinox can teach us a deepened gratitude. When we know that something is fleeting, we can appreciate it more. And maybe it can teach us also to remember that at the peak of our joy, our privilege, our success, there are those who are grieving or struggling. Maybe it can make us a little more understanding, more generous, more willing to use our power for the good of others. Life coach Karen Sella writes about this time of year. Perhaps there is something about the abundance of darkness and decay that heightens our appreciation for life and our awareness that life goes on, not only despite, but also because of death. The small deaths of autumn, she says, are bearable reminders of the seemingly intolerable grief that each life must inevitably bear. Lessons of impermanence take on multicolored hues, a daily reminder to strip down to essentials and let go. The leaves fall, the sky weeps, cleansing rains fall, driving us inward to huddle around the genuine warmth of heart and hearth. So as we transition into this fall season, I invite you to huddle around the places of genuine warmth in your life. Honest relationships, true feelings, sweaters, pumpkin spice lattes. And may the equinox remind us to embrace the full spectrum of our living, the ups and the downs, the dark and the light. And if you can, look up into the night sky tonight and see if you can find those stars. Remember, this is the ride you came for. The fear and the sense of flying. Amen. And blessed be.
It has become our practice to pose a question based on the theme of the service each week. It can be a topic of sharing at coffee hour today or with friends during the week. And if you'd like to delve deeper in the conversation, please join our Zoom coffee hour Tuesday at 5 p.m. Just let us know if you need the link. Our question this week is, what is your favorite thing about fall? What is your favorite thing about fall?
Thank you for joining us this morning. Thank you for joining us this morning online. Charles Stephen, who wrote our reading about E.B. White's dog, also wrote our closing words that I'll share with you now. I wish for you a troubled heart at times, as woes of world and friend come close beside and keep you sleepless. I wish for you the thrill of knowing who you are, where you stand, and why, especially why. Not prosperity, but dreams I wish for you. Not riches, but a sense of your own worth I wish for you. Not even long life, however proud we'd be to have it so, but life that is crammed with living, hour by hour, and love I wish for you. May you give it frequently. I wish for you solitude in the midst of company, and a mind full of company within your quiet times. Full todays I wish for you, and full tomorrows. Go in peace.